Click the links to join the channel. Thank you for the members. It helps a lot. Join the Subscribe Star, Odyssey, Bit Chute, Telegram, or Gab TV. So there's a lot of energy behind Eric July, and I want to do this in 10 minutes, but there's so much to cover. These people want to call Eric July a fashionable German of the 1930s so much, but they know they can't, but they really want to, and it hurts them so much. They're trying to. The most they can say is like, oh, well, their audience. Like, there's this whole corner of YouTube. I guess it's loosely the Comicsgate Fandom Menace corner, but I'm not exactly sure where he fits in. But it's around there. Like, there's a lot of channels that are adjacent to being just annoyed with SJWs, like sick of cultural Marxism. I guess it's the Phantom Menace Comicsgate branch of this kind of YouTube tree. I mean, the left-wingers, like, they try to call them something more further to the right, but it's like, even left-wingers look at a lot of these, Phantom Menace channels, are like, yeah, these don't look like, some extreme right-wingers because they don't like the Star Wars movie, and you'd be surprised how many times you get on Twitter and you see somebody say they don't like one of these movies. Ryan Cannell seems to drive them crazy. The Odin's movie blog, and there's a couple of others who they just immediately call them fashionable ones. So when people on Twitter say something like they don't like a movie, I swear to a lot of the responses are "found the racist" to some very milquetoast comment about why somebody didn't like a movie. It's like, oh, it wasn't loyal to the origin story. It didn't honor the artistic vision of the artist. Looks like I found the racist. But you swapped out the character. You could have done it either way. It wouldn't have been the artistic. That's what the fascist says. Like, you're dealing with deeply disturbed people on Twitter who I think are, they come home, they have their box wine and a bottle of pills, and they get on Twitter, and you look at their tweet history, and you're like, so you did 4,000 tweets this month? That's pathological. I mean, that's probably time for rehab if you're doing that kind of stuff. All right, so there's a couple of points. A rising tide is going to help all boats, and if you're in this corner of the internet where you're selling independent comics, whether you use a label Comicsgate or not, it doesn't matter. These are like loosely anti-woke comics. This is an anti-woke movement. I wish there's a better name. And the thing is, a name will come up. Something beyond Comicsgate, because this is kind of Comicsgate 2.0. This is definitely shifting into the next phase of Comicsgate into a much wider audience. And the effed up thing is, how do I do this in 10 minutes, is Richard Meyer had the chance to go on Rogan's show, and that would have blown things up in a different direction. And he didn't do it because, to be fair, as much respect as I have for the guy, he's a little weird. He's a little too weird for a mainstream movement. So like, he was kind of he started something great, but it was always going to be small if he was at the apex of it, just because if you listen to him, you like him, and like I do, I still like him, totally support the guy. I don't care that he's a little bit weird. I've got respect for what he started. I'm very forgiving of people's little idiosyncrasies and things like that, but he was not going to be the person who was going to be at the forefront. I mean, you saw his interview with what's his face. And the thing is, maybe he would have warmed up to it over time, but like, he didn't even want to give it a chance. Like, most people, if you told Ethan, hey, we got a chance to go interview with Rogan or somebody at that level, Ethan would be out there in a tent waiting for that interview, because he knows that interview is worth millions of dollars to him and to everyone associated with him and Comicsgate. And so, when Myers blew off the interview, people are looking at him like, you're insane. I mean, we don't say that with malice, but like, that's a mentally ill thing to do, to bypass an interview with someone who can get eyeballs on your project and Comicsgate. It's like I'm not gonna say he's not playing with a full deck, because he's a very sharp person, but he's playing on a different field than everyone else. Like, he's okay with what he's doing, where somebody like Ethan would be out there. He would just be on Fox and Joe Rogan, like, he would be blowing that up. He would love that attention, because he knows what it would translate into. That would translate into tens of millions of dollars, if not more, over the years. If not way more. If you're talking about animation and movies, it's like, that would have just been a rocket ship for him personally, and also for Comicsgate, everyone associated with independent comics. So like we look at that. That was a kind of, you look at Myers when he did that, when he bypassed that interview. You're like, dude, that's just absolutely nuts. So that's the thing about rising tides. Anyway, so the thing is, for the culture war narrative, Myers, he started it, but it's now it's spreading out beyond Comicsgate. That's why there's so much energy behind July's comic and behind his platform too. Because Comicsgate, you know, it was a core, and it wasn't growing as fast as it could have, because there's a lot of infighting in Comicsgate. I'm gonna skip all that to try to shorten this up, but you know the history of Comicsgate, and maybe I can do a longer video on it. It's like, if you've been around since the beginning, like Comicsgate had a lot of so much infighting that it slowed things down way too much than it had to. So now it's kind of moving beyond Comicsgate, kind of into the Phantom Menace corner. And it's spreading the idea that woke is cringe, and there's a market for anti-woke, which is, you know, where the money flows is where there's energy, and there's energy behind this comic. And it's a way, you know, people are just buying the comic to own the libs. Hey, that's any reason to get started is friggin' absolutely fine. Politics are downstream from culture. Eric July doesn't fit the narrative. The narrative is just, you know, developmentally disabled. So he's kind of used as a little bit of a bargaining chip, and he's going to be under a lot of pressure, but he's also got a few $1 million on a comic and a very lucrative, fast-growing YouTube channel. So it's worked out well for him, even if he has to be kind of like the POC shield and the POC sword. And like that is just, most of us on the right actually look at that and we just like, we hate that. It's stupid. It's embarrassingly cringy. But it's important to the left wing way more than it is to the right wing. Though the left wing thinks it's important to the right wing, even to the people on the furthest right, it's not as important to them as the left wing seems to think it is. But I mean, there's way more to go into that. But that's kind of like, the terms of service of YouTube are so ridiculous, you can't even have open, honest conversations anymore. Except, I guess on a live stream you can, because then they just delete it. So there's a whole lot of aggressiveness on Twitter. They say it's a scam, but they said the same thing about Comicsgate, that money was going back and forth in some money laundering scheme, that a lot of the anti-Comicsgate people are mentally ill. I don't know if they think that the Comicsgate people who've got a history of spending their time on YouTube and making comics are actually selling, you know, fully automatic M4s and laundering money, or, you know, narcotics, or some bizarre contraband theory. Like, that's the theory some of them have, because I mean, that's insane. Not because people don't necessarily fit the expectations of what you expect an arms dealer to look like, but it's like these people are busy doing other things. They're busy making comics. The comics don't make themselves, and they're busy on YouTube. I mean, some of the theories are. So how exactly does the money just move back and forth? I mean, because like the financial transactions take like 5% of it. So like that doesn't quite make sense unless you're saying the money's coming from an outside source. You're talking about like these people are selling contraband, like M4s or something like RPGs. Is that what you're saying? Like these comic book guys are selling RPGs on the side? If you told them that, they would almost take it seriously, because a lot of these people on Twitter are just like, it feels like they're on the benzo red wine diet. So the thing is, the SGWs know that if they make videos about why they enjoy some soy comic, it's not going to get any views, because even soy boys don't want to hear guys who sound even more soylent than they are. Like, there's not a lot of loyalty between soy boys. They're eager to just stab each other in the back as fast as they can. And like making a channel where you're talking about how much you loved Ms. Marvel or Captain America or some, you know, one of those latest SGW white man bad comics, you're not going to get a whole lot of eyeballs on that, because very few people actually enjoy modern comics. They might collect it or something, but that's a really limited audience. It's not like it was, because I mean, they're objectively bad. Objectively bad, I can say objectively bad because they don't sell very well. Subjectively, if you read them for yourself, if you think they're great, great, go get into modern comics. But you're not meeting many people who are reading modern comics and go, oh, this is a great thing to get into. I'm a 12-year-old kid and I'm just reading Ms. Marvel for the first time. I think that's not going to happen. Go back and read the comics you read as a kid from the, you know, the 40s on up. It's like, no, you might not have been alive in the 40s, but back in my day, there were comics from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, 70s, whatever. You're reading them, you're like, oh my God, these are fantastic. And I only say that because as an adult, I can go back to those old comics from 50 to 80 years ago, go, oh, they're still fantastic. Where you look at the modern stuff now, oh, this is horrible. A comic from 1950, one of those great old World War II comics, Wars in the Pacific were some of my favorite. You can go back and read those right now. You're like, oh, I went back and I read the entire run of the Hulk from the beginning to the end. I did with a couple other comics too. Go back and read the Hulk from the very beginnings. What a fantastic comic it was. Which is weird because you'd think, oh, the Hulk's kind of a limited character. Not with good writers. With good writers, they can make that. I went back and read some of the Hulk comics. I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff was so good. And then you get to modern day. And in modern day art, obviously, the color process is much improved. But the modern day stories, like, oh, hey, a lecture on the Second Amendment. Oh, that's great. That's great. That's just what I want to freaking hear. Some asshole in the UK giving Americans a lecture on, get fucked, Al Ewing. What a fucking asshole that retard is. Oh, hey, a lecture on trans rights. Oh, how topical, Al Ewing. A lecture. I don't want to hear, no disrespect to the LGBT community at all. Like, we know, we don't need to see that in every comic book. It's like, it's just not it's just, there's not that many people out there who identify. And like the rest of us, we kind of know that this is a fad. Again, no offense, but like fads come and go, and let me skip this. I don't know if that'll get me in trouble on YouTube. I said no offense, so that makes it cool, right? So let me say, Eric July really stirred a hornet's nest with this crowd, way more than like EVS or Myers or John Malin would ever have a chance at doing, because he obviously is going against the narrative, and they're looking at him, they're like, you're a race. Oh wait, we can't call him. Can we call him sexist? Like, I don't know if there's anything in his comic that's sexist because it's not out yet, or anything on his platform that's. I mean, they're looking to call him some sort of istophobe, and they call comicsgate that, and you're like, listen, are there legitimately people who are objectionable, myself included, in or around CG? Yeah, but so are the SJWs. You're gonna find something to be offended by. But the thing is, CG is kind of cool, is it's such a loose group. It's like one person loosely associated with the group doesn't represent the whole. Like, you wouldn't do that with any other group, but they feel comfortable. Whenever it's somebody on the right, they will poison the well by applying like one member's behavior to that of the whole. It's like, oh sure, can we do this with your side too? Oh no, how dare you do that? That's istophobic. It's like, I don't feel like you guys are arguing in good faith and fair dealing. Anyway, the thing is, with a lot of stuff, like they want to these SJWs, these anti-comicsgate stuff, they don't really have a counter argument about your position. Because if somebody has an opinion on a movie or a comic, you can't really counter their opinion. All you can do is talk about the merits of these SJW movies or comics that come out, which is really hard because they're such horrible stories. Oh, you're fighting the blonde, blue-eyed, skinhead, crooked cross-wearing Supreme German from the 1930s again. Gosh, what an original idea. You're really fighting the power with your hatred against the people that the globalist media parasites told you it's the one group that's acceptable to hate. Next, you'll tell me you hate Christians. Oh, hey, Al Ewing, there's a scene in Al Ewing's comic where the Christian priests are bad, and it's like, never an imam or a rabbi. Isn't that weird? It's only Christian priests. It's like, there's other groups that do bad things also, but you won't see them in comics, which is why people are so fed up with comics, obviously. And why they're willing to, like, wait, you paid $50 to own the libs? Yeah, that's not a reason to buy a comic. Get fucked. Any reason for someone to spend money, hashtag support me and subscribe star, is a fine reason. If this is the part of the culture war you enjoy, when you spend $50 every few months to buy somebody's comic, you get a whole lot of enjoyment. You probably get more enjoyment out of comicsgate than you do out of Netflix, Amazon, HBO, all these other stupid streaming platforms, because a lot of us have moved away. Oh man, this video's running long. A lot of us have moved away from that, where we don't want anything mainstream, whether it's movies, comics, any mainstream science fiction books, if you're still reading the genre, where you look at like, oh, we're going to have to find alternative sources. In movies, we're not going to find alternative movies anytime soon. Comics and books, yeah, there are alternative. Vox Day's got his thing going on. John Delarose, Ethan Skyler, everyone in Comicsgate and in and around Comicsgate all have stuff that they're putting out there. There's starting to be this growth of this alt community. And, you know, when you say alt, it makes it sound like some kind of far right, alt right, Yahtzee, whatever. It's like, that's no, it's like, people are just so, the left wing mainstream narrative is so insanely far left that people are willing to pay a premium, to pay $50 for a comic, you know, for a graphic novel that is like, it's way overpriced from what you buy in the store, but it's like the stuff you buy in the store is coming from like Neil Gaiman, who, you know, you find out like, oh, he race and sex swap everybody, because like he's willing to sell out for any amount of money. You find like, oh, all these people that you might have enjoyed decades ago or years ago, it's like they're complete and total sellout hypocrite pussies. They're actually bad people. So even though you could buy the equivalent comic in a store for $13 and you're paying $50 for it here, it's like, yeah, but you're supporting a movement away from the mainstream, and that's worth a lot of money to people. Anyway, to tie this up, Eric is important because he's going to be the focal point. I don't know if you want to say leadership for something such a loose collection, like an economic club like Comicsgate, because there was no leader up until now. Like, Myers didn't want the position, and he's too friggin' weird, no offense. And Ethan is, he's got a chip on his shoulder, and he's too much of an asshole who fights with everybody. Again, no offense, I have a ton of respect for Ethan and the help he's given so many other people, but I'm keeping it at 100 with you. You know, he's not a leader. Myers is not a leader. Where Eric July doesn't have that kind of baggage with him. He just doesn't have that with him, and he's got his own independent platform, so it's not like he's got a lot where if he's the focal point now, which is why you're going to see the growth of this. And it's like, maybe it's not exactly a Comicsgate, but it's anti-SJW comics. It's like, oh, that's Comicsgate, and it might turn into something else. Like RIPPAVERSE, the name RIPPAVERSE is probably going to be way more well known than Comicsgate, and you know, the Rippa universe, he'll probably have a website, and it's like, people will probably, Comicsgate might shift over there and start selling their stuff over there, which is great. It's like, you know, just flow in the direction the energy is, as long as it still has your values of being anti-SJW. And, you know, what his comic will turn out to be, it's like, you're going to have to wait to get it. But I think it's already, you know, he already wrote it. It's already, like, he showed the videos of him shipping the thing out. It's like, no, those are empty packages. Like, so the state district attorney is going to prosecute him for mail fraud? Is that what you're saying? Like, even federal fraud for, you know, interstate commerce? Like, you're saying that this guy's, he's gonna abscond with your money and misrepresent it, and like the district attorney is going to charge him for fraud in a few months when the comic never shows up? It's like, is that your argument? Because it sounds insane. There's videos of him in a warehouse stuffing posters in tubes and mailing the crap out. No, that's all. Could be a hologram. There's a lot of insane people on Twitter. Thank God I'm not on Twitter anymore. I have my Twitter account, but it's permanently suspended, but it's still up there. It's just you can't see the posts, but I can still use Twitter. It's kind of weird. I tried to appeal, but they said it was just relentless, hundreds of examples of hate speech, incitement to hatred or something. I said no offense after everything I said, so I'm not really sure what they're offended by. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Check me out on Subscribestar. Thank you for the recent support. That's going to be an interesting platform in the future, because it's only $2 a month, and it has a lot of potential for growth. And I will see you guys all next episode.